On July 6, 1988, the crew of Piper Alpha, a massive oil production platform in the North Sea, went about their usual tasks. Located about 120 miles northeast of Aberdeen, Scotland, Piper Alpha was one of the world's largest oil rigs, producing over 300,000 barrels of oil per day. The platform was a hive of activity, with workers managing complex systems to extract and process oil and gas. Little did they know, a small maintenance issue would soon trigger a chain of events that would turn the rig into an inferno, claiming the lives of 167 men and leaving a lasting impact on the oil and gas industry.
The tragedy began with a routine maintenance task. Earlier in the day, a pressure safety valve had been removed for repair, and a temporary cover was put in place. Unaware of this maintenance, the night shift crew unknowingly started a condensate pump connected to the temporarily sealed pipe. Within moments, gas leaked through the weak seal, filling the surrounding area with highly flammable condensate gas. At 10 p.m., the gas ignited, causing a massive explosion that shook the entire platform. The blast tore through equipment and piping, sending workers scrambling to evacuate. But this was only the beginning of a night of horror on Piper Alpha.
The initial explosion disrupted the platform's fire suppression systems, and the backup systems failed to activate. Without functioning firefighting equipment, the fire spread rapidly, fueled by the oil and gas flowing through Piper Alpha's pipelines. Nearby rigs continued pumping oil and gas into the platform, unaware of the unfolding disaster. As the flames intensified, pipelines ruptured, unleashing torrents of fuel that fed the blaze. The fire raged with such intensity that it was visible for miles away, turning the night sky into a fiery inferno. With no effective means of fighting the flames, the crew found themselves trapped on a platform engulfed in fire.
As the fire grew out of control, the remaining crew members scrambled to escape. The intense heat and thick smoke made navigation nearly impossible as visibility dropped to zero and the temperature rose to unbearable levels. Many of the workers sought refuge in the accommodation block, hoping for rescue, but the area soon became filled with toxic fumes. Helicopters were dispatched to rescue the trapped crew, but the thick smoke and extreme heat made approach difficult and dangerous. Some workers, realizing the hopelessness of their situation, chose to jump into the cold waters of the North Sea, desperate for a chance at survival. Many perished from smoke inhalation, while others drowned or succumbed to hypothermia.
Around midnight, another pipeline ruptured, releasing an even larger burst of oil and gas, causing a second massive explosion. This blast ripped through what remained of the platform's structure, causing sections of it to collapse into the sea. By this point, much of the platform was a tangled mass of burning metal, and rescue efforts became nearly impossible. Piper Alpha was now beyond saving, and the men who had been unable to escape were trapped in the heart of the blaze. At 12:45 a.m., what remained of Piper Alpha sank beneath the waves, leaving only smoldering debris and a haunting silence over the North Sea. In total, 167 men lost their lives, with only 61 survivors escaping the disaster.
News of the Piper Alpha disaster stunned the world. Families of the crew members waited anxiously for news, hoping their loved ones had survived. The tragedy left communities across Scotland and beyond in mourning as the full scale of the disaster became apparent. Piper Alpha remains the deadliest offshore oil disaster in history, a harrowing example of how a single failure in safety procedures can lead to catastrophic loss. As survivors and families grappled with the tragedy, questions emerged about what had gone wrong and how such a disaster could have been prevented. The loss of 167 men cast a long shadow over the oil industry, with calls for accountability and change growing louder.
In the wake of the disaster, the British government launched a public inquiry led by Lord Cullen to investigate the causes and identify ways to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. The Cullen Inquiry, one of the most comprehensive investigations in the history of the oil industry, revealed a series of fatal flaws in safety procedures, communication, and emergency preparedness on Piper Alpha. The inquiry found that inadequate maintenance procedures, a lack of proper training, and insufficient fire protection systems all contributed to the scale of the disaster. Crucially, the inquiry highlighted a breakdown in communication between the day and night shifts, which led to the startup of equipment that should have remained offline. The findings of the Cullen Report reshaped the oil industry's approach to safety, emphasizing the need for rigorous safety protocols and comprehensive emergency response plans.
The Piper Alpha disaster was a turning point for the oil and gas industry. In response to the Cullen Report, new regulations were introduced, placing a greater emphasis on safety and risk management. Rig operators were now required to implement robust safety management systems, and comprehensive fire and gas detection systems became mandatory. Regular safety drills, better evacuation routes, and improved fire-resistant equipment were put in place to ensure that offshore workers could respond more effectively to emergencies. The Health and Safety Executive, HSEC, took on a greater role in regulating the industry, holding companies accountable for the safety of their operations. The legacy of Piper Alpha transformed offshore oil and gas safety worldwide, with lessons from the disaster serving as a constant reminder of the stakes involved.
Each year, families, colleagues, and the wider community gather to remember the 167 men who lost their lives on Piper Alpha. Memorials in Aberdeen and other parts of Scotland honor the victims, ensuring that their memory is preserved and that the lessons of the disaster are never forgotten. For those who survived and for the families of those who did not, the legacy of Piper Alpha is one of sorrow and remembrance. The story of Piper Alpha remains a somber reminder of the risks faced by those working in the oil and gas industry and the importance of rigorous safety standards. The disaster may have reshaped the industry, but it left a mark on the hearts of those connected to it, a symbol of lives lost and a commitment to protecting future generations.
The Piper Alpha disaster's impact endures in the oil and gas industry as a sobering example of the consequences of inadequate safety measures. The tragedy reshaped attitudes towards safety and risk, making it clear that the protection of human life must come before all else. The policies and protocols established in the wake of Piper Alpha have saved countless lives, transforming offshore safety practices across the globe. The story of Piper Alpha is one of immense loss, but also one of profound change. It serves as a constant reminder of the responsibility the industry holds in protecting those who work in such hazardous environments.